right, there we go. Gonna bring up my unified chat here. Okay, and welcome everyone. This is Ben with the Tiger's Den, and we are going to be doing a little Magic the Gathering arena today. And today it's going to be deck tech, actually. Yesterday we played through a number of different decks, gave some thoughts as we played through, and today I figured we would go a little more in-depth on one of those decks, the Elemental Aggro deck, and just cover the card choices and how it plays out, and see where we go from there. So this is the same deck we were playing for most of our matches last time, the Lightning Striking deck. If you want to check out the footage from that, you can find it on our YouTube channel, Tiger's Den Gaming. But yeah, so we're going to just go over our card choices here, kind of discuss the thoughts behind each one, and how the deck sort of plays out, and then play a few matches afterwards. So this is our list. As you can see, it is an Elemental Tribal deck. We have, let's see here. I'm a little bit off to the side, aren't I? Let me just fix my camera a bit. That was the wrong direction. Okay, there we go. Looks a little better, I think, hopefully. So yeah, we have an elemental list here. It is the standard Temur version of elementals, so green, red, blue. And in this one, as you can see, we have red as our primary color, and then green and blue are both splash colors. That's going to be important in the future here. A lot of the elementals lists right now are more of a green-blue focus with a red splash, and they're running less burn, often cutting Creeping Trailblazer, Scampering Scorcher, Chandra, Acolyte of Flame, and going for the more ramp, with Nissa, Hydroid Krasis, that sort of thing. So, as opposed to that deck, we are going a little bit more aggro here. And that's why we got Lightning Stormkin here as the poster child for the deck. So let's go through the cards and talk about why we're running them. In the 1-drop slot, we have just Shock. Shock obviously is a format all-star. There's a lot of aggro running around out there. There's lots of people playing red deck wins on the ladder and in casual. And also Orzhov Vampires right now. Black-White Vampires is the or almost the top deck in the format at the moment, along with the Scapeshift decks. So it's really good just to have this spot removal that you can play turn one, even on the draw you can blow up one of your opponent's things. And we have plenty of red sources here that can come in untapped. We got even the 2 basic mountains helping us hit that on turn 1. I've experimented with both Llanowar Elves and Scorch Spitter in the 1-drop slot. Llanowar Elves never felt great in this deck. It is nice to accelerate, but it just wasn't where the deck wanted to be. It's not very good after the first couple of turns, so it gives you more dead draws. And the mana acceleration, because our curve is lower, I think we've got 24 lands here. Lower curve, average CMC is 2.7, so it's pretty easy for us to play out our hand pretty quickly. So spending our early turns not, trying to get out a quick Risen Reef that usually gets removed right away. It's great to have that turn 2 Reef, obviously, if you can get the colors right. But it just felt like it was leading to too many dead draws when we just needed gas later on. The other card that I played with here, like I said, is Scorch Spitter. Oops, that is not how you spell Spitter. The 1-drop Elemental. 1/1 deals 1 damage to whatever it's attacking, 1 it attacks, basically. And I played with this for a while. It is actually fantastic in this deck on turn 1, but has the same problem with Llanowar Elves, where it just leads to so many pretty much dead draws later in the game. And we're not aggressive enough like red deck wins or something like that, where any threat that we play is going to threaten to kill our opponent. We're a little more mid-range value than that. The other reason that Llanowar ended up coming out here too, along with the being hard to hit on turn 1, because we really have to warp our mana base for that, with just 3 breeding pools right now. And the 4 stomping grounds, sorry. But also Icon of Ancestry. This means that we need to have a lot of elementals in our deck, and going from, I think we have 23 right now. Yeah, so if we're cutting down our elemental count to even 19, that's a big problem for us. Leads to a lot more whiffs and fewer creatures we can buff. So that's our 1-drops, just Shock, but Shock's great. You should run a lot of them. For our 2-drops, this is probably kind of controversial. list of two drops that we have. We're going to start with Lightning Stormkin. This is this is not a card that has really caught on in a lot of lists, I feel like, but it has been. I find it great in this deck. It usually is a high priority removal target, which is actually great for us because we have these really high value targets, Risen Reef, Chandra, Omnath, that can just take over the game on their own on 3 or 4 mana. So being able to draw out removal early is really nice. It spreads our opponent's removal out, meaning that they have less stuff for our more powerful cards. And if it doesn't get removed, it's a pretty consistent clock. People are often shocking themselves with shocklands, bringing down their life total, and just being able to get in turn 2, especially on the play, where opponent probably doesn't have any interaction, and you can just get in for that 2 free damage and keep hitting every turn. The other things that are important about this card are, one, we have both Omnath and Overgrowth Elemental that can put +1/+1 counters on creatures. We have Icon of Ancestry, which is just a Lord, so +1/+1 to all elementals. Creeping Trailblazer pumps power. So we have tons of ways of making Lightning Stormkin bigger. And then having evasive creatures, especially hasty ones in this format, I've found to be really powerful. One, because it's good for pressuring life totals, but two, because of War of the Spark, there are so many super powerful planeswalkers running around that being able to answer one with a creature that stays on the board, keeps giving us value, has evasion, all those things is really, really important in a lot of situations. Obviously, there's some things like, your opponent plays Nissa and you have a 2/2 hasty flyer while their planeswalker is on 6 and giving them a 3/3 every turn while ramping their mana. That doesn't feel great, admittedly. But, a lot of times, opponent puts down, a little Teferi. If they bounce the Stormkin, it comes back down and kills them immediately. That's not the worst. You'd rather that not happen, but... Anyway, yeah, and so just chipping in for that extra damage, taking out Planeswalkers, great for those things. Creeping Trailblazer, our other 2-drop elemental. I think it's important to have 8 2-drop elementals here, just for density and also for velocity of the deck. We could have things like Leafkin Druid, which again, another mana dork. Generates mana, but again, it kind of suffers from the Llanowar Elves problem, while also being a little bit clunkier because of being a 2-drop, which means that we can't accelerate. We can't use it to accelerate into our 3-drops, which are the most important part of the deck. So, it is an elemental. It gets buffed by elemental things. Icon of Ancestry hits it, but it just doesn't feel like where this deck wants to be. For more aggro lists, or more ramp-focused lists, obviously, that is an all-star card. And then we have 4 removal spells here. I like the 2/2 split here. Like I mentioned briefly in the previous video, I feel like Standard is in a lot of ways a Lava Coil format right now, at least in Best of 1. In Best of 3, I'd probably put these in the sideboard, but we're just playing Best of 1 for right now, so we'll talk about that. There's a lot of 4 toughness creatures out there. You see, like, Feather, or even, Heaven Help You, Enter the God Eternals tokens, or things that you want to exile. And so for both of those cases, Lava Coil is really important. Also, if your opponent gets down a Wild Growth Walker and gets a +1/+1 on it, Lava Coil is still a clean answer to that. And that card can really wreck this deck because of all the life gain and how big Wild Growth Walker gets. So Lava Coil I found to be great as a 2 of. I have 2 more in the sideboard for if I bring this into Best of 3 by accident, although this works pretty fine in Best of 3 too, so it's not a huge deal if you do that. And then 2 Lightning Strike. Lightning Strike, obviously, it's great. It's an instant, 3 damage, can go to the face. Really nothing more needs to be said about it, other than I really love having these 7 cards here that are all pretty cheap removal, and / Burning Face, because of Chandra here, who can recur those with her -2 ability, while also just being an all-star in pretty much every way in this deck. So having lots of cheap burn spells, really great with Chandra as well. So it leads us to the 3-drops, and so let's talk about Chandra for a second. So obviously we don't have any other Planeswalkers in this deck, especially if, it needs to be red Planeswalkers. So her 0 ability doesn't do a whole lot. It is useful sometimes to put her out of range of something if we can't really chip in with her other 0 ability. But the second ability, the 2/1/1 elemental creature tokens, is great in this deck because that synergizes with Icon of Ancestry, giving them +1/+1. It synergizes with Creeping Trailblazer, buffing their power. It synergizes with Risen Reef, getting you a draw and possibly mana ramp off of every one of them. It synergizes with Overgrowth Elemental, getting the death triggers, buffing Elemental, and it synergizes with Omnath, giving you more creatures to make the burn bigger. So I think we saw pretty much all of those come into play in our previous game, or previous games with this deck. Activate Chandra, put down Omnath, deal 3+ damage to something or to face to finish someone off. Just absolutely great in this deck. And then, of course, there's the -2, which, I mean, we all know how good Snapcaster Mage is in Modern, for those of us who play Modern or were playing Standard at the time. And it's just as good here. It's a little bit pricier. It costs 3, so you're usually not going to put down Chandra and then immediately flash something back. But it happens pretty frequently, actually, because, sometimes you draw Chandra on turn 5 or 6, you have the extra mana, although you have to watch out for how much red you have, although that's part of the reason this deck is so heavy on red. Almost everything in this deck makes red. So, yeah, just being able to drop her down, and, maybe your opponent has, like, a Viashino Pyromancer or something, just 4 mana, Chandra, shock, you have a Planeswalker on board, you've dealt with their threat. Just great for that sort of thing. So we already touched on Overgrowth Elemental a little bit about why that's so powerful, but there's so much going on here, and like I said last time, this is a card that either your opponent undervalues it, and then and lets it survive, in which case it has a lot of synergy, buffing Stormkin, gaining life, things like that, great synergy with Chandra, or they just kill it immediately, and that means that your really heavy hitters, like Risen Reef's not a heavy hitter, but, it wins every game it stays in for more than a few turns usually. Your Omnath, your Chandras, those are all sticking around for longer. And it leaves the counter behind, and because we have a decent number of 2-drops, we can usually stick that counter on something. So yeah, this is one that I would probably only run 2. If I had another elemental, I would rather run in its place, but for now I've actually found 3 to be pretty good, and especially in those aggressive matches where the life gain is really relevant, in a less so in Burn because they're better at removing it, but in something like like a Gruul Stompy deck or something like that, where they often don't have the interaction for it, and this thing can just get huge beyond their ability to control while gaining you life. Really great. Living Twister. 2/5 for 3, surprisingly relevant. We saw it get up to a 3/6 pretty early in some previous games, and with Icon of Ancestry, and that is pretty tough for a lot of decks to deal with, honestly. It's really good at stabilizing your board, and it can also chip in for some damage with the discard ability. Giving you extra reach, which is great when you have these burn spells as well. I'll admit, this is probably my least favorite card in the deck. It's really good when it is good, but there's a lot of times when I'm playing best of 3, this comes out, just because largely because a lot of decks don't care about a 2/5, and a lot of those decks that don't care about a 2/5, you really can't afford to be spending all this mana dealing 2 damage. Discard a land, that's a really big deal. Pay 2, deal 2, if your opponent is a Esper control deck and they're gaining life off of their Oath of Kayas and everything, that's really painful. So if they're on Esper Hero, obviously, pay 2 to blow up their hero of Precinct 1 is amazing. Definitely keep it in there, but it's one of those cards that's why I'm only running 2, because, sometimes it just doesn't do that much, but even when it doesn't do a lot, it almost always does something, so, it deserves a space here. Risen Reef, of course, we all know it. We all either love or hate it, depending on what side of the deck we're on. Absolutely insane card. This is the mythic uncommon, as they were just saying on the Magic stream earlier today. I don't have to talk about it that much. I think just the fact that it cantrips when it comes into play, maybe it ramps you, it cantrips every time you play any elemental or when Chandra activates 3 times off Scampering Scorcher, all amazing. And then finally we have Icon of Ancestry, which, as we've mentioned, is really good, just as we have a pretty decent go-wide plan here, with the Scampering Scorchers, the Chandra making 2 things a turn, all that. So we get a lot of value out of it for that reason. Like I said, we have 23 elementals, which I believe puts us at about a 75% chance of hitting on any given activation. We also have mana ramp because of Risen Reef, so we often have mana to pump into this and then also play the card that turn. And then finally, it's just a way of grinding out those games where we're brought to a standstill. Like, if we're against Grixis and our opponent's been 1-for-1ing us all game, this is a way, assuming they don't bedevil it or something, this is a way for us to pull back into the lead and close out a game. And of course, while doing that, it also buffs power and toughness. So, and also, very important when you have a lot of X1, 1 toughness creatures running around, just putting them out of Chain Whirler range is a really big deal. It makes your Scampering Scorcher a lot less weak in the burn matchup. Speaking of Scampering Scorcher, 4-drops, we have just 6, and that's where our curve tops out. Like I mentioned, we have a pretty lean curve in this deck. Scorcher's another one that I could probably see going down to 2, but I don't have another thing that I'd really love to bring in, and I want to keep that elemental count up for Icon of Ancestry. So we got the 3. One really overlooked thing here is in those later games, after you've ramped with Risen Reef, this can give haste to another elemental, so a lot of times you might, play a Creeping Trailblazer, follow up with Scampering Scorcher, give Trailblazer haste, swing for lethal, something like that, especially if you have the icon out and everyone's bigger because of that. So just don't forget that part. Obviously, it has the great synergy with Risen Reef and with Omnath as well, giving you 3 bodies for Omnath's Cheeto Fingers, as people are calling it, the, reach up and grab someone, deal damage ability. And then also there are some matches where you just need it for 3 blockers, and that's not ideal, but sometimes it gives you the time that you need to find that last shock or lightning strike to finish someone off. And then finally, Omnath, another great standout card. As you can see, I got the style applied to that one today. Also, someone pointed out to me that once you look at this art for a little while, it looks like Omnath's about a foot tall, and I haven't been able to unsee that since then. Like, I'm sure that's not the artist's intention, but it is hard not to see any longer. But anyway, Omnath, buffs your guys, deals damage, draws you cards, everything about it, just great. Yeah, that is pretty much the deck. We can go over the land. Oh, and also, one more thing to mention. We saw last time that there are main deck Tocatli Honor Guards going on around there. Let's see, so we'll just bring that one up. Because I don't have white. Okay, so Tocatli Honor Guard stops all enter the battlefield abilities from triggering off of creatures. So that is a big deal for our deck. Omnath is the only way that a lot of decks have to remove a card, so just having these lightning strikes, lava coils to blow up Tocatli when it turns off our Omnath, that has actually been relevant in a surprising number of best-of-1 games, especially in that Feather is really popular right now, and a lot of Feather decks run Honor Guard, so another good thing about that. Anyways, for mana base, you'll see we have almost everything in this deck makes red. The exceptions are the 3 breeding pools. That is largely a concession just to getting these in untapped while fixing our mana. And the unclaimed territories, which of course this produces any color when we're spending out elementals. The reason we're not running 4 is because we were creeping up on too many non-red sources for Chandra Acolyte of Flame, especially on those turns when you want to play Chandra minus Chandra, flash something back that takes 3 red that we can't pay for with unclaimed territory. So that's the mana base for now. It might change a little bit. Like I said, we're very heavy. We have twice as much red as blue, and almost that much more than green in this deck. So I very seldom find myself struggling to hit my right colors in this deck, but it does happen sometimes. If I were to take this in best of 3, I do have a sideboard here. I'm not 100% sold on this, but this is what I got for right now. So we got some Healer of the Glade, which is largely there because I didn't have anything else that I felt was great to bring in this slot. But Healer is actually pretty good against more aggressive decks. At the very worst, it chumps while giving you elemental synergy and gaining you 3 life. That can be really big when you're trying to outrace someone, which we are often trying to do because we're not a hard control or like value mid-range deck. We're sort of splitting the line there. So that's very nice. Veil of Summer is an insanely good card. We are very weak against, because we're a synergy deck where all of our individual cards are not great to actively bad on their own. We're weak against things like Thought Erase for making us discard our cards, and also spot removal, like Cast Down, Tyrant Scorn, things of that nature. So Veil of Summer turning off basically spot removal and discard in blue and black for 1 mana, meaning we gain tempo on our opponent, and drawing us another card, is just insanely good. So I actually have the full 4 in here. You have to remember that if you're bringing in a bunch of Veil of Summer, you're diluting your elemental pool, but it's just so good at shoring up our weaknesses that I'm running the 4 for now. Aether Gust I found really great in a lot of matches, like especially against an opposing Nissa, where your opponent always gets the 1 activation, but then you can put a stop on your opponent's upkeep, Aether Gust Nissa on upkeep so they can't activate her, and then, do it after their draw, so that they can't activate her, and then they can't draw her again that turn. So that is really, that's quite good. And also, because we're playing in that kind of, splitting the difference between tempo, or between aggro and control, just having a good tempo play like this is often great. And being able to target spells along with permanents, also very nice. So that got a couple slots. Fry, Fry is great. There's a lot of white or blue planeswalkers running around, a lot of really good value creatures, and the uncounterability is just fantastic. So, bringing it in against Feather, where it can kill pretty much anything in the deck, as long as they always have protection. But as long as they don't have protection, can kill pretty much anything in the deck. Bringing in against opposing to fairies, where even if they're getting a card off of it, you're still getting a big tempo advantage in the mana. Great for things like that. As I mentioned, Lava Coil, I have 2 more in the sideboard. Just a really good card in the format. And then we have 2 double green cards, as you'll see here. Now this is kind of odd, because we don't have a whole lot of green in the deck. We only have, 11 green sources for casting non-elementals. And that makes these kind of dicey, which is why there aren't many of them. But Shifting Ceratops is another really good counter to those decks that try to pick us apart with, discard and spot removal. So if we can get this down, that often fades most of their removal. Like, they can't Teferi it, they can't Nickel Bolas it or anything like that, and it can often kill something the turn that it comes down, which is very nice. And then 2 Nissas. And Nissa was in my original build of this deck, but I removed her because she warped the mana base a lot, just trying to get that double green. This was in the build with the Llanowar Elf as well, so we did have some mana fixing there. But I don't think Nissa's quite at home in the main deck of this deck because of the 5 cost, because of the double green, and because we don't have any way of ramping into her other than maybe hitting off of Risen Reef exactly on turn 3. But there are a lot of decks where she does do really well for us in those, where we're trading 1-for-1 resources with our opponent, because we usually end up, if we sputter out, we're usually, we have our opponent on a relatively low life total. So Nissa rolling herself up to 6 while giving us effectively a 3/3 every turn, and giving us a little bit of ramp, although less than in most Nissa decks, can help you finish out the game a lot of times. If you have a Nissa going while you have an Icon out or something, you're effectively getting 2 or 3 threats every turn, which can really help you close out those grindy games. So that is the deck tech for our Elemental Aggro deck, Lightning Striking. And so yeah, now that we've done that, let's just take it into a couple more games here. Tomorrow, if I have time to stream, I would really like to do a stream of the event that's going on. It's a standard constructed singleton event, meaning that you can only run 1 of any given card in your deck other than basic lands. So it's still 60 cards, but those are really fun because you get to play and see on your opponent's side a lot of cards that don't always make the cut in your standard constructed decks. So yeah, I really hope to do that. I put an elemental deck together for that, and last time I did an Is It Spellslinger deck that was a lot of fun, and that was probably my favorite event so far, is just playing the singleton. So anyway, we've got our opponent, looks like, ooh, we were on the play this time, guys. That is quite extraordinary for us. No Curious Obsession on our opponent's side, that's great for us. Okay, we are probably going to get counterspelled here, because we're looking at 2 open mana. So the question is, what do we want them to counterspell? And I think the answer in this case... See, we're probably going to be racing our opponent, so Creeping Trailblazer plus Chandra is really good. So I think I'm actually going to put down one of our Risen Reefs, because if it resolves, awesome. If it doesn't, that means that our opponent has less interaction for our Chandra. And I would actually rather stick that here. Okay, good. Comes in. gets us our card. Presumably, there we go. Ooh, 3 creep. Well, if we get another land, double creeping Trailblazer next turn could be really good. Could have Merfolk Trickster here, but I feel like we need to make them have it, and then we trade anyways, so... they're on 2 mana, so they can't Brineborn Cutthroat, and then... Okay, Brineborn Cutthroat, and then buff it, but I guess it would still have 2 toughness anyway, so that wouldn't really be a blow-up. Being on the play against flash decks like this is really important for us. Let's see, I'm pretty sure we do not take this trade because our opponent could buff up their Brineborn very easily, although that would let us get out Chandra. You know, I think that might be correct, actually. Because I don't think that we're going to win this by playing the value game. I think we're going to win this, and we do win it by playing the tempo game. Opponent does not buff their Cutthroat. Looks like they're going to leave up mana here. They could also play a Tempest Djinn. Nope, nothing. Okay, so no land, so we can't double Trailblazer. I do definitely feel like we're running into removal if we play out our Chandra here, but we are winning the race at the moment. So let's just play another Reef. See what they do. If it resolves, even if we get it killed again, we're still up a card. Alright. They definitely have some kind of interaction here, or some kind of spell at least. Okay, good. Let's... I'll do this just to demonstrate it. We can decline to put this into play, and then play it untapped, whereas normally it would be tapped. From coming in off of Risen Reef. So opponent could definitely have a flash someone in again, but again, I feel like we have to make them spend their resources. The best play might be to attack with Creeping Trailblazer, see if they do anything, and then play Chandra, but I mean, if they let the Risen Reef in, that's great for us. If they counter it and let something else in later, that's also great for us. So, okay, Merfolk Trickster comes in. Taps down Reef, it looks like. And it looks like it'll trade with Creeping Trailblazer. Or are they just going to let it through? I mean, letting it through is probably not a good idea for them. Okay, yeah. They are indeed going to kill it. And see, this is where it actually would have been better for us to have attacked first, because they had that Merfolk Trickster. I really should have done that, because that would mean that they would only have Spell Pierce to interact with Chandra, so they would be a lot less likely to be able to... Okay, there's the Tempest. Unfortunately now, we will not be able to, unless our opponent really messes up, we won't be able to Lava Coil their Tempest Djinn, because they can sack Siren Storm Tamer. However, let's think about our lines here. We have a land, so we can double spell, one can be a 3-drop. So this is where having Chandra would be really nice, because we could Lava Coil minus Chandra Lava Coil. As it is, we can only Chandra Lava Coil. But that might actually be a decent play, because we can get the Chandra down. Well, Chandra will die to their Tempest Djinn if we... But not if we... Well, but then we can kill her with something else. Okay. Yeah, not really any great plays here, so I think what we're going to do is... play out that... Chandra will die if we play her this turn, so instead we're going to see if they interact with Icon of Ancestry. If they Spell Pierce it, we can actually pay through it, or... Okay, they do not. Name Elemental. And then we are going to play out a Creeping Trailblazer, get as much power on the table as possible. Get our proc off of Risen Reef. Ooh, Scampering Scorcher is a good one here, because that's 6 power and 3 draws. Slash ramp. Alright, so I'm pretty sure we're taking 7 damage here. Opponent opt. They could find a Curious Obsession would be really good for them here, because we can't deal with whatever they put it on. It would probably be Tempest Djinn, which would put it out of Lava Coil range. Our out at the moment is to... yep, that's really bad for us. Because our out here is to be able to double spell. As it is, we now have a lot fewer outs. And they got a card draw, of course. How much power do we represent here? We have 6 on board. This puts out another 6 and takes them to 6. No, sorry, we have 6 on board. This puts out, these are all 3 3s. This is another 9. That's 15 damage, I believe. It's, yeah, 9 plus 6, 15. That takes them to 3. Oh, if we had one more mana, we could just kill them if they can't block. But as it is, we are going to get killed by Tempest Djinn. So I don't think... yeah, I think they got us. I think they have us here. We're going to run out the Chandra now. If they counter it, then that's definitely GG. The way that we get the most damage on the field, I believe, is to Chandra, minus Chandra, play Creeping Trailblazer, swing with everything. Our opponent just kills it, the Tempest Djinn, and we have no way of getting rid of it at the moment. So I think that playing to that out is our best bet. Recur. Yeah, I think this takes the opponent to 2. So we need to, like, get in the land. Oh, well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Yes, this also takes them to 2. Oh, also, we can't play it because we're tapped off of... the person tapped off of blue. So, yep. This is going to do it, I think. Opponent would have to make a huge misplay to miss lethal here. Well, there is the shock that if we had one more land, we could just kill them. But, so we will just swing the side. See what happens. Yep, opponent goes to 2. We do not have the land, so we can't shock them. We'll just put in the good game. That was close, though. We'll let him finish this off. We're tapped out. There's no free spells in this format as far as I know. Just put it on full pass. So if we would have played the Chandra out early, there's a good chance they got countered. That would have been the Psychic play so that we could double Lava Coil on their Tempest Djinn the turn after it came out through the Siren Stormcaller. Also, just drawing another Repeater spell for the Stormcaller would have been really good there. But, you know, sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't, even if you're on the play. We did end up with a really... an awful lot of cards in hand versus their 1, even though they had that that Curious Obsession online. So if we could have stabilized there, we would have been in a very commanding lead, I feel like, but we're just a little bit behind the ball on that. I do sometimes feel like this deck could use a 4th shock, but it is one of those cards that's very low impact on a lot of board states and versus a lot of decks, so I'm keeping it at 3 for now, and then diversifying the burn a little bit more. This isn't the person we just played, is it? We go first again. We have... I'm going to keep this. With 1 land, we can play pretty much anything in our hand. Chandra might be a little dicey because we have the unclaimed territory there, but... we'll see. Sometimes you keep 2 when you draw nothing, and then... oh, no, this is not our previous opponent. Okay, so we're just going to run out Stormkin there. Get 2. Hope to draw a land that'll let us cast probably Risen Reef. It looks like our opponent's probably on Flash. Oh, no, they are on Elementals with Healer of the Blade, which I really hate as a main deck card, I'm not going to lie. I think it's very low impact in too many matches. Let's see, I'm pretty sure we Risen Reef first. Well, actually, it would be better to swing first, leave up our mana just in case there's, you know, so we give less information to our opponent, have more resources in case there's combat tricks of some sort. I don't know what it would be, but then we'll play out the Reef. We will definitely take that action, put out our Mountain. We already played a land this turn, so we don't want to decline and then put it in untapped to, you know, bluff shock or something. Our opponent might actually be on just straight up blue-green elementals here. They've played 3 blue-green lands. Also, they have this great breeding pool art. No blocking with Blade. My dog has been a little bit sick today, and she is panting behind me, so apologies if there's any loud panting-related noises. Let's see. I'm pretty sure they're play here, so we could put out Omnath, put out a Sulphur Falls to get a buff from the Omnath, but I think that instead we are just going to run out a land to make sure that our tapping works well. Yep, okay. We're going to play a Chandra. Good chance that we got countered here, but that's okay because we're way ahead on the board. No response from the opponent. So let's draw some cards. Put out the Steam Vents. Draw an Overgrowth Elemental. I'm going to hold back the Risen Reef. It's possible that they could flash something in these colors, and even if we could kill it with Lightning Strike, I would rather save it. So, you know, if they put out something we want to burn, we can do it at the end of their turn. It was probably safe to go in with Reef there, but I think that the upside of playing conservatively there is better than the... oh, okay, they're on Abzan. Okay, so we've got Yarok, probably. Yarok Elementals. Pass. We'll see if they go at Chandra or at our face. Oh, they don't go in at all. I guess they just want to hold off the Risen Reef or a Chandra token, more likely. Alright, we'll pass to them. They're representing Frilled Mystic here because they got blue, blue, green, green. That is scary for us. I think our first order of business here is just going to be activate Chandra, see what we hit. We'll do this first because it doesn't really inform what our opponent does. And then we get more information about what resources we have access to this turn. We've not played a land this turn, so we can decline this. That also means that we can put it into play after playing Omnath if we so choose. We already have a Lightning Strike, so I think I'm just going to... We hit our opponent for 5 if we Omnath, more if we can play a thing before. We can't play another before. Okay, so... 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, so that's 4. Yeah, so we could Overgrowth Elemental Omnath, but instead I'm just going to burn Healer with the Glade so we can get in for more damage. I'd be very surprised if they do anything in response to this, but we'll see. They are holding. I really like this Muyan Link sleeve. Alright. We will run out Omnath. See if it resolves. I'm pretty sure this is going to get Frilled Mysticked. But we do have a Lightning Strike to kill the Mystic, and then we have another Omnath next turn. So, that seems fine to me. Alright, so we will play out this Mountain. We'll play this Lightning Strike to kill the Frilled Mystic. That could have been a reason to hold Chandra's activation, and opponent's tapped out, so I'll go so that we could potentially minus and shock a Frilled Mystic, because we have this one we just used on the Healer of the Glade. But I think it was much better to activate Chandra, see what we hit, try to get some ramp, you know, stuff like that. Cavalier of Thorns is one of the reasons that Lava Coil is really good in this deck, so let's see if we hit one of those. The reach is actually incredible against us. Okay, so let's see what we can do here. We can go up to 1, 2, 3, 4. We can just get up to 6 elementals and then kill Cavalier of Thorns. Let's see what they can get back. They can... Ooh. So they can find Finality, get back Frilled Mystic, God Eternal, Kefnet. I don't think we have a way of... Oh, wait. Wait, they're at 8 at this point. If we play... I don't think we want to double burn them. Put in a thinking here, because activating Chandra means 2 more points off of Omnath plus getting in for 1 more point, so that's just as good as minusing in terms of burning our opponent out, plus it gives us the draws off of Risen Reef. So let's lead with that. If we can get like a Scampering Scorcher or a... Oh, Stormkin's really good. Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lands, so we can play... I think we just want to play Stormkin. Get the Reef activation. Take the action because you got a land in hand. Play Omnath. Yep, that should do it. Burn the face, go down to 2. Just play a land, we'll buff. Okay, opponent skips. Alright, so, yeah, opponent's deck was... I've never seen anything quite like that before. Having an elemental deck with Kefnet seems very strange, because Kefnet obviously is not an elemental. And it didn't... I guess we saw Find Finality in there, which is another interesting inclusion. But, yeah, interesting brew. I would have liked to see more of it, but a little too fast to do that. This deck, as I mentioned before, I brought up to a 68.8% win rate last season on the ranked ladder. Okay, we will keep the 7. We're on the play again. I think we broke the on the draw curse. But yeah, so about a 70% win rate. My previous season I played Is It Phoenix, so that was for the, June season. I played Is It Phoenix to a 51.5% win rate in about as many games, so much worse, obviously. So I think this deck has some real legs. I had a really good matchup versus, lead on tapped land here so we can Stormkin next turn. Really good matchup versus Red Deck Wins. That was one of our best, actually. Storms. Okay, so this is probably not Elementals. It is probably the Cavalcade of Calamity deck. So we are just going to... I don't think we can race this deck. If they have Cavalcade on turn 2, then we're just in for a world of hurt, and we'll need to try to kill this guy. Because they are much faster than us. We want to play the control game here. We really want an untapped land here or a burn spell. Okay, Temple of Epiphany. Okay, so not Cavalcade, then probably Grixis Aggro. Okay, they go to the bottom, so that's good for us. We'd like to see them not liking what's on top. Untapped land would be great here, because that'll represent us getting in for a decent amount of damage, unless they have something good they can play for this. Maybe a Footlight Fiend or something that could kill both of the elementals on the block. I don't know. Oh, that doesn't even work, because the trigger would go off after we dealt damage with the second elemental. Okay, Shock is pretty good here, actually, so we can just play the tapped land. Now we will attack for 2, because I think we poorly guessed what our opponent was playing. So I think we will let them get in for the 2 here. If we were going to kill this, we should put a stop in here. Okay, so this probably is... This probably is the Cavalcade deck, because here's a bunch of goblins. So what I'm doing here is, now that I've decided I'm going to shock the Scorch Spitter, I put a stop on their on their main phase, so that before they go to combat, I can shock the Scorch Spitter, just stop the 1 extra damage from going in. We have nothing else to do with that mana this turn anyways, so... We got a red source here. That is not the kind of red source we were looking for, because then we could have flashed that back. But this is actually even better, I would say, because we can play that. We can play Omnath. We can just kill the Instigator, and then we can get in for 2 more with Stormkin. So you see our opponent's the aggressive deck in this case. They are lower to the ground, it looks like, more aggressive creatures, and we have them at 14 to our 20. So you can see this deck putting in some decent amount of aggression, and it's been on the back of this Stormkin, just being able to chip in there. And we didn't even attack with it the first turn it came down. They could be at 12 now. But of course they've been helping us by shocking in some lands too. So I want to take some time to decide what they want to do here. I don't begrudge them that. A lot of people think that aggro decks and red deck win style decks are just autopilot, but I do not believe that is the case at all. I think that they require a lot of heuristics, especially because a lot of your spells are bimodal. Your removal spells are also burn spells, and there's a lot of questions about how you sequence your plays. So what you put out in what order is really important in this sort of deck. So yeah, I have do not begrudge them at all going to rope there. Although now I'm a little confused because they're tapped out. They could be holding a land they're deciding what to do with. I don't really see a reason for them to hold back here because our guy has flying. I think what we're going to do here, because we like life gain and we like racing here, and also we can't flashback anything for Chandra yet. We're just going to Overgrowth Elemental. We're going to buff Stormkin. We're going to swing for 3. We're going to have a blocker here. Play the Rip on Crag. That gives us Chandra minus Chandra recast Shock next turn, which will be a really good line. our opponent has Cavalcade of Calamity, that's actually pretty good for them here, to be able to get in for a fair amount of damage, but us sitting at 20, okay, looks like they're going to remove Overgrowth Elemental. It's not ideal for us, because we'd love to gain the life off of playing it. Oh! Spitfire comes down. Okay, now is when we would really love to have a 3 damage burn spell. No such luck, but this is going to be really good for us. So, we're going to play out the Chandra, and instead of flashing back Shock, we are going to make Elementals. These Elementals are not going to get in for much, but they are going to gain us life, and they're going to buff Overgrowth Elemental. We're not going to swing with Overgrowth Elemental because they can kill it by double blocking, and we really don't want that to happen. So we'll see what they do. We're swinging in for 5 here, which is almost lethal on them. Fire makes sense. That guy dies, we gain a life. Overgrowth Elemental gets bigger. We'll play out this land. Elemental dies, gain a life. Overgrowth Elemental is now a 5/4, which is a huge problem for them. Especially because this turn, we can, unless they kill Chandra, we can make 2 Elementals, which will get us in for more damage. We'll buff the Overgrowth Elemental. We can then minus Chandra, play this Chandra and either do it again or minus Chandra to remove a blocker. So we have a lot of good lines coming up here. And our opponent is missing on Cavalcade. I still don't know why this Temple of Epiphany is in here. I wonder if it's just there for the Scry or something, because it's really important to hit. Oh, that's really cool. Okay, so this is actually a Tetsuko deck, which basically a Cavalcade deck with Tetsuko Umezawa. But yeah, so she makes it so that basically everything in their deck is unblockable, which is great for them. Let's see. They can kill our Chandra here. No, but they actually, if they'd had a burn spell, they could have actually burned our face, pumped the Spitfire, killed Chandra, but they don't. So they are in a lot of trouble here. So we can't minus this Chandra. We'll just 0 her. Now they have to block. Okay, so if Tetsuko blocks Overgrowth Elemental, they're taking 5 here. So I believe our best line... Let's see. I have to just do some combat math here, which is hard when you're streaming. Okay, so they block here. We get in for 5, take them to 2. If they block here, then we take them to 1, or take them to 3. So they don't know we have this Chandra. I'm just going to swing with this. See if they chump with the Goblin. If they don't, we take them to 2, play Chandra, shock them, and win off of that. Otherwise, we have them at 1, and we gain some more life, and we have an evasive guy, and 24 life, another Chandra we can play. So we're in a really good spot, whatever they do. Okay, so they just chump 1, so we're going to make sure that the auto tapper doesn't screw us. Play Chandra. We will say yes. Of course, this Chandra goes away because we can't have 2 legendaries. Minus 2 Chandra. Cast Shock. Shock him for 2. Pay red. And that'll do it. So yeah, opponent, we looked better than we should in that game, to be totally honest. Opponent bricked on Cavalcade of Calamities, which is just so important to their deck. Take a look at that kick, quick. I think that's how it's spelled. Calamities. I wonder why. Oh, it's Calamity. There we go. So yeah, this thing, every time they attack basically anything in their deck, it deals an extra damage to us. That pumps the Chandra's Spitfire by 3 every time it happens, so they could just easily one-shot us with a couple of decent creatures out, especially with Tetsuko, who stops us from blocking. So, just unfortunate for our opponent there. Getting some raw draws, and then us. You see we had a lot of come into play tapped lands that time, which is why we have those breeding pools, even though they don't produce red, just to try to curb the number of times that happens. So you can see that really, really slowed us down there. We had our turn 2 play because of the Uncharted Territory, but then after that, can't play our Chandra. Turn after that, we can't Chandra minus Chandra because we don't have enough red, or come into play on tapped land. So You can really see the mana base straining a little bit. And that's going to get worse post-rotation once we lose the check lands. The, comes into play tapped unless you control this kind of land. Okay, what do we have here? This is pretty good. Opponent goes first, so we're going to have a draw. We have some 2-drops that is important on the draw. We would love to have a shock so that we can deal with anything that comes down on their first or second turn, hopefully. But we'll keep this. We can play everything except for Omnath, which we can play off of any land. Watery Grave, Knight of the Ebon Legion. Okay, that is kind of... Okay, put the Fear of God into him with our 8 cards in hand, apparently. I just keep checking when I get text here to make sure it's not Chris telling me, like, oh, you should adjust your levels, or like, oh, scoot over a little bit. So I think we're, what, 3-1 with this now? I haven't been keeping track, actually, but, I mean, that last one technically is a win. It doesn't mean anything, but if we're going by record, that's what we're at now. So keeping ahead of pace of the previous season's win rate with that. But, of course, with deck tech, not here to prove anything, just here to show you how things work and over-explain everything. Opponent mulligans. I'm going to mulligan this, I think. Well, the shock is really good, but we have no turn 2 plays, we have no come into play untapped lands, and we only have 2 lands. So, opponent mulliganed, I will also mulligan this land. This hand is way better. We're missing the shock, but our mana base is much stronger. We'll toss back Whipbound Crag because we have double... Well, actually... We don't really need more than 1 blue ever here, and triple red is very good for us. And 2 green is obviously fine. So, opponent gives us a Firebrand. That's bad for us because we have no interaction and nothing we can actually play until turn 3. So we'll play the Steam Fights tapped. And cross our fingers. Opponent and I getting a little cat war. Cat wars are, of course, the cutest wars out there. That's very good for our opponent. Drawing 2 cards for 1 mana in the red deck and then doing it again. That's actually a little sketchy because they... Just put it in Stomping Ground because, again, we've drawn 2 3-drops in our hand of nothing but 3 drops. Because they're going to lose one of these lands now. But they'll be able to land scampering. What was up with that must have been a mistake on my part. I can't imagine they meant to play that mountain instead of one of these ones. These are gone forever now. We draw another 3-drop. Okay. Whatever you say. So I guess we're going to play Living Twister and see if that's enough to stabilize us. Our opponent had a slow first couple of turns, even though they had some pretty good plays. The Legion Warboss is going to be a huge problem, but at least Living Twister will probably stop them from swinging with it, so we can stem the flow a little bit. They could swing with it, buff the Goblin token, sack Warboss to Twister, and then Lightning Strike Twister to get this out of the way, which would be great for them, especially because next turn we're going to make Twister a 3/6 probably. Okay, Zhanggu's Spitfire is going to put some hurt on us. I'm deciding if they want to go with 1 or 2 goblins here. I'm guessing this means their last card is a Spectacle card. Here's the issue. If we do this, they can sack Fanatical Firebrand, Lightning Strike. Oh, they can't Lightning Strike because they don't have enough lands. Okay, well, we'll do this. Alright, worked out. We're holding them off here. I think the best thing we can do is stick this Overgrowth Elemental with a Chandra out. So I'm just going to play Stomping Grounds tap because we can't do anything with the land. Well, we could also... Do we maybe just want to discard Stomping Ground, spend 2 mana, blow up Legion Warboss? That's a lot of mana to spend on this. And we're kind of walling the Warboss. So I think I'm gonna do it this way. I think I'm gonna Stomping Ground. Tap. I'm not swinging here, so I'm just gonna play this all out right now. And then Chandra, which they'll have a hard time dealing with without sacking a bunch of their board into our Living Twister. Unless they have burn spells, but that's fine because we have lots of Chandras and they only have one card in hand. We're not going to attack here because they can just eat with Warboss, eat with Spitfire. So we will just plus Chandra to make it a little bit harder to for our opponent to kill her. It would be great if they decide to spend their resources on killing Chandra. Oh, opponent has their own Chandra. That's actually a really good answer here, because that'll give them a couple of 1/1s they can chip in for some damage through our little Twister with. We'll also have the Legion Warboss token that has to attack. They could also have a burn spell, which they could go face and then make the Chandra Spitfire a 4/3, which would mean that with that and 2 token attacks, they could guaranteed kill Chandra. We could have played Rootbound Crag. Okay, so I assume that means they're... Oh yeah, right, because, yeah, non-combat damage. That guy buffed the Spitfire. Alright, so it looks like they're taking out Chandra. That is, like, perfect for us. I really think they should have thrown... Oh wait, no, because that's, yeah, 4 or 5... Okay, so yeah, they're killing Chandra no matter what. So that was perfect on their part. 4, 5, 6, we block 1, she goes to 0. So yeah, they throw the... It might have actually been better to permanently kill that guy, but fogging some damage here is pretty good too. Okay, now the issue is that I don't think we can actually keep a Chandra on the table, so I think we have to Overgrowth Elemental. See, there we were playing around them having a shock for Overgrowth Elemental or another Fanatical Firebrand, which would mean that our Overgrowth Elemental would die. But with what they had, having the Chandra there, they were able to kill our Chandra anyways. So it's going to be hard for us to come back into this unless we can stick that Chandra and just have Overgrowth Elemental take over the game. Also, if we can land a burn spell on their Spitfire, we're in a good spot. But yeah, we have legitimately drawn nothing but 3 drops in this deck, and our average mana cost I think is 2.7. So coming up on the raw end of the RNG here for the matchup that we're in. Opponent swings with Hullside. Mentors the Spitfire. That's a good one, because of course we can't block that. Storm Spitter is going to put Spitfire up to a 5/4, which means you might just be dead here. Well, we can eat this guy, take 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, go to 1, I think. So any burn from our opponent's killed us. Yep, there you go. Good game. And that actually takes us down to 9, and then Spitfire becomes a 8/4. So, yeah, on its own, that takes. As you can see, very clunky draw. We opened with, yeah, we mulliganed to 3 drops, and then we literally drew nothing but 3 drops. So sometimes it happens. If we'd been in a matchup versus a grindier mid-range opponent, that would have been a pretty good hand. But best of 1, you never know what you're gonna get. I think this will probably be our last game for this one, so let's see if Rusty Shackleford gives us a nice match. It is a kind of borderline hand, but again, we've got a draw, we can play everything in our hand, we've got good lands, and we have Icon of Ancestry, which we can use to draw more threats if need be, and that's a great draw. Alright, so it's lead on the breeding pool, so that next turn we can, without shocking, have all of our colors. I never realized how cool the sound effect for that is. Alright, opponent's on Esper. So, let's hit it. Teferi. That's not too bad, actually. They're gonna get a tempo. This is a tempo win and keeps card parity. But Chandra's actually a great answer to the Teferi. So, just go ahead. We could also kill him by playing the Stormkin back out. But this lets us put 1 damage on our opponent, and also it spends all 3 of our mana, whereas now next turn we can shock in a land, play Stormkin and Trailblazer, which will set us up nicely for, so that'll be 3, 5, 6, 7 damage, I think, so take them to 10. We're actually going to play the Unclaimed Territory here so that we don't have to shock in. let's go ahead and activate Chandra.
Don't worry.
We'll play Stormkin because they know about that, so we're not giving them any information by doing this. We'll see if they want to counter it or something. Esper isn't playing many counter spells right now, but you never know. Might as well give them the opportunity because I would rather stick the Trailblazer. Obviously, we're playing Trailblazer before combat because it will buff all of our elementals if it sticks around, which opponents thinking long enough that it looks like it's probably not going to. What do you got? You could have either counter magic or, like, you know, a Mortify or a Tyrant Scorn, anything like that. Cast down. These decks are full of those things. Vraska's Contempt on the shot.
I am not happy right now.
So it might seem kind of odd to do that now when we've gotten 4 power out of it, but opponent didn't know that she was going to represent 4 power. They only knew about the, they didn't know about the Creeping Trailblazer. And they probably wanted to see if we were going to play something like an Omnath or a Risen Reef that would potentially be a higher priority target. So opponent 2-for-1s us there. That's pretty okay. We're going to just play out a Scampering Scorcher here in Smash, I think. That means that next turn we can Archon of Ancestry, activate, and play a 2-drop, or what have you. Although I'm going to think we could also Omnath, play a land, make it a 4/4, but that seems bad. We could play out Archon of Ancestry this turn. Yeah. The correct play to me seems like play Scorcher, get in for 3, take him to 9, give them 3 targets if they want to. They can wrath the board again or something, but that's their only way of answering this, and it's already dealt 3 damage. So you can see the power of Scampering Scorcher here, even without synergy card, just, you know, putting on additional pressure. I'm thinking about which one I want here. Yeah, it's going to be this one. I'm not going to put it in untapped to bluff anything here. Doesn't seem worth it. Alright, there's another Teferi. That's not the best answer for what we got, but it takes some pressure off. It makes us... Okay, D-Spark, so they're trading a card for a 1/3 of a card. Ooh, another Scampering Scorcher. Okay, well I think that now Scampering Scorcher is the play, rather than Icon of Ancestry that uses up more of our mana. And I don't think there's any reason to play the land first or second. So yeah, play this out. Their ability to plus Teferi, and then play an instant speed board wipe on our next turn is really threatening to us, so we are going to go in like this. If we added a removal spell, that would punish us because Teferi would survive, but taking them to 6 instead of 7, or seems worth it. And I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, I'm going to play this out because I don't think giving one guy +1/+1 next turn, if we don't draw another land off of Omnath, and I don't think that's going to be worth it. As opposed to being able to potentially play Omnath and Icon next turn. The opponent's got 3 cards and all the lands in the world. Cry the Carnarium is excellent for them. Oh my god, we draw another Scampering Scorcher. We are 1 mana and or 1 point of damage short of just winning here. So... yeah, boy, 1 land. 1 land. 1 damage. Of course, they could, you know, counter it or have a removal spell, but hands lighten up. So we're looking at their graveyard here. I wonder if... Devious Cover-Up will all be damned. That is not a card I was playing around. I'm going to give them the nice for that, because that was definitely nice. So opponent could be stabilizing here. They have 1, 2, 4 mana, up maybe 5. They have a Tyrant Scorn. Okay, well, Shock's pretty good. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have 6 mana. So we're just going to Omnath. We could hit the Narset for 1, but I don't like that plan. We're going to hit them down to 3. That makes Omnath lethal. Slash puts them on 1 with our Shock. It might have been correct to shock their Narset. Ooh, yeah, okay. That is a big punish for us. Alright. Bad news, bad news. Should have shocked the Narset. I was thinking that if their only out was Tyrant Scorn, they bounce Omnath. We replay Omnath. I'm just going to shock them right now, actually. I don't think we're going to have better shock targets now that Narset's on 1. So if they had only Tyrant Scorn, that can't kill Omnath. Replaying Omnath and shocking them is lethal. So that was why I did not shock there. Yep, Tyrant Scorn kills the Risen Reef, but it draws us our card. Overgrowth Elemental plus Icon of Ancestry is lethal, so we'll just play that out. Make our opponent find another answer. If they get like a Teferi or something like that, that's great for them. We're going to play the Risen Reef right now, because if they have a counterspell, hopefully this will draw it out. We will take that action because there's no reason not to as far as I can see. Because we don't have any one-drop elementals, so... Oh, and we can't activate Reef anyways. Okay, Slide Hunter's tapped. Then we'll Icon, see if it resolves. Name Elemental. Got him! I thought they'd stabilized with that Oath of Kaya, but we just managed to get there. So, I think we went, what, like 4-1 there? Maybe 5-1, depending on if you count the Knight of the Ebon Legion scoop game. So yeah, it worked out pretty well. You got to see us kind of playing the aggro and the control and the more mid-rangey kind of matches there. Yeah, so and don't quote me on the win rate there. I'm not paying attention, honestly. So if I'm wrong, if I'm making myself sound better than I really am, forgive me. I'll try to do better next time. So, yeah, that is Lightning Striking, our Elemental Aggro deck. If you want to see another deck kind of like this one, Jeff Hoogland put up a similar video. Let's see here. Oh, you're not going to see this because I don't have an overlay for it. Let me see if I can quick set up. Oh, looks like I cannot add another... Oh no, here we go. Okay, source. Oh, I'll set it up later. I don't have to show it, I guess. But so I'll just go on Google here. So Jeff Hoogland, Temur Elementals. Should have brought this up ahead of time. Yeah, so he actually has it on his website, just Jeff Hoogland, jeffhoogland.com/decklist/Temur-elementals. He's got some gameplay up there. It's a similar list to ours, although it's not identical. Notably, he's got Chandra Awakened Inferno in there, who I did play with for a while, and took out because we never get to 6 mana. We do sometimes, but you know it's a late play. The -3, while it's a one-sided board wipe, often isn't that relevant at that point. The -X can be good, the +2 can be good, but yeah, just 6 mana, that's not exactly where we want to be with this deck. One thing I could consider with this is going down a land. 24 is... I'd say 24, 23 is exactly where we want to be. We do have some mana sinks in Living Twister and Icon of Ancestry, so going a little higher seems like it could be good. And also that just helps you double spell more consistently, and this was less the case in the past, but with lots of Simic Flash and that style of deck running around, being able to turn 4, cast like a Lightning Stormkin and a Creeping Trailblazer, or like Lava Coil your guy, Drought removal, play Stormkin, or you know, on 5 mana, removal into Chandra or something like that. You know, that's really important in those matches, because that's the way that you beat those decks, is either by getting in under them, which we have a hard time with without any 1-drop creatures, or by double spelling and making them overpay to answer your threats, so that they can't quite keep up. So yeah, you know, but that's how it looks. Let me know what you think of the deck, of the gameplay, of the video in the comments. Just, you know, you talk too fast, enunciate more clearly, you know, brush your hair a little bit more neatly, you know, like get the part looking a little better there. I don't know, you know, whatever comes to mind. If you like this video, you can like, subscribe to get more stuff like it, and keep your eyes peeled for more Magic the Gathering and other video game content in the near future. Like I said, I will try to do some streaming tomorrow. I'm going to be out for a lot of the day, but we'll check out this Amonkhet Singleton format with the Elemental Singleton deck that I put together. Unlock some Amonkhet lands, which I like these ones, by the way, because they're all by the same artist, which a lot of the cycles I do not believe are. So, and then of course the great Jonovan swamp, basic swamp style. So, yeah. Anyways, we'll hope to see you then. And until then, this is Ben with the Tiger's Den signing out. Thanks for joining us.